it's so good to see everyone here. So we have some new friends. For people who ever don't know about Fyli yet, we are female founders mastermind. Right now, we have a global community of 7,500 female members, and we have 80% female founders and 20% corporate C-suites. And for tonight, it's my great pleasure to introduce our moderator, Kate Kelly, who is also tonight's event producer. Kate's role as head of partnerships at Fyli and senior vice president of brand partnership at Rise combines her expertise in conceptualized strategic partnerships that drive brand reputation and business growth opportunities with her passion for human rights. She has over 16 years of experience in experiential marketing strategy and strategic partnerships within the entertainment, CPG, finance, luxury, and spirit sectors. Kate has developed programs for some of the world's most recognized events, such as the Tribeca Film Festival, Comic-Con, South by Southwest, Miami Art Basel, and Art Miami. And she has implemented marketing strategies and initiatives for brands and agencies such as Louis XIII, Showtime, YouTube, HBO, Hulu, Google, just to name a few. So without further ado, I will pass to Kate Kelly.
Thank you so much, Summer, and thank you so much, Lilly and Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul for being here today. We're so excited to have you and to dive into this conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to give a little background and intro to both of our incredible guests. Governor Kathy Hochul began her career in public services on her local town board before serving as Erie County Clerk, and then as a member of Congress for New York's 26th Congressional District. Since 2015, she has served as the highest ranking female elected official in New York state government. Lieutenant Governor Hochul has successfully spearheaded numerous initiatives and leads the administration's economic development and job creation efforts across the state, working every day to advocate for policies that help all New Yorkers make ends meet. I'm proud to introduce the 77th Lieutenant Governor of the state of New York, Kathy Hochul.
Well, thank you, Kate, and to all of you ingenious young women who came up with the concept of Fyli to say, yes, we need to have a platform to elevate all of our voices together and to share our life stories, talk about what we're going through, but also look to other people who've helped hopefully pave the way for you. And that's something that I didn't have when I was younger, starting out in a very male-dominated field in a law firm and in politics and on Capitol Hill. And I just admire all of you for just using your talents to create this opportunity for others to feel empowered. And that's what this is about. And I love to see this in the next generation. So I just feel honored to be here and also to be joining the stage with Lilly Ledbetter, who is just someone who I've looked up to for so long for her tenacity and her willingness to challenge the system. And the impact that her life has had for millions of women across this country is profound. So thank you for allowing me to participate tonight.
Thank you so much for being here. And I'd love to take this opportunity to introduce Lilly Ledbetter. Lilly Ledbetter was born in a house with no running water or electricity in the small town of Possum Trot, Alabama. She knew that she was destined for something more. And in 1979, with 2 young children at home and over the initial objections of her husband, Charles, Lilly applied for her dream job at the Goodyear tire factory, even though the only women she'd seen there were secretaries in the front offices where she'd submitted her application. She got the job, one of the first women hired at the management level. Though she faced daily gender prejudice and sexual harassment, Lilly pressed onward, believing that eventually things would change. Until 19 years after her first day at Goodyear, Lilly received an anonymous note revealing that she was making thousands less per year than the men in her position. Devastated, she filed a sex discrimination case against Goodyear, which she won, and then heartbreakingly lost on appeal. Over the next 8 years, her case made it all the way to the Supreme Court, where she lost again. The court ruled that she should have filed suit within 180 days of her first unequal paycheck, despite the fact that she had no way of knowing that she was being paid unfairly all those years. In a dramatic moment, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg read her dissent from the bench, urging Lilly to fight back. And fight Lilly did, becoming the namesake of Barack Obama's first official piece of legislation as president. Today, she is a tireless advocate for change, traveling the country to urge women and minorities to claim their civil rights. Thank you so much, Lilly, for being here.
Thank you. It's a joy for me to be here And I never turned down an opportunity to share my story or talk about my experiences, because what happened to Lilly Ledbetter and her family should not be happening to any American family, because that's the American right, equal pay for equal work. And it not only affects the female, it affects the whole household. And it not only affects your income today, tomorrow, but the rest of your life. It follows you into retirement, because most retirements, whatever it is, 401k, a company retirement, and then Social Security, they're all based on what you're earning. So it determines your livelihood today and for the rest of your life. So it's critical young people understand this, and you can't make it up later, because raises are generally percentages. And if you do not start out with a proper salary and benefit package, you can't make it up. It's gone, and it's gone forever.
True words, and it's unfortunately the way it is, but we're going to change that. And thank you, Lilly, for being an advocate for change, for standing up to what was wrong, and for sticking with it for as long as you did. I would love to start this off by listening to how you both got started in public service and why that isn't so important to you. And I'll let you go ahead and start, Lieutenant Governor.
I never thought I'd be in public service. I was born into a blue collar family. My dad worked at the steel plant. My parents used to live in a trailer park. And so, we didn't have a lot of advantages, children of immigrant, my grandparents were immigrants and lived in great poverty. So the American dream was simply just going to a public high school and having the opportunity to go to college. But what I learned at the kitchen table from my parents is that in the 60s, they were social activists, despite their humble upbringing and their personal needs. They also thought and taught us as children that we should be finding ways to help other people. So my parents were helping spearhead initiatives to help people in poverty. We always had children who were from orphanages in our house and from other countries, and helped migrant children of local farm workers have a summer day camp. And I really was just instilled this sense of obligation to others, and was involved in the civil rights movement and marches as a child, and fighting the Vietnam War because of injustice. And so that was part of who I became, as in part of my DNA. Running for office was never anything I expected, but I became a volunteer for the local Democratic Party. And when I was a teenager, I used to take an hour bus ride down to headquarters and stuff envelopes, but I was doing it with people like Tim Russert, who were working on Senator Moynihan's first race. And so I got to know some really key people who, as a teenager, they helped me. They helped perfect my writing. They helped me understand the power of government, as politics as the means to get good people in government. So I was just inspired by a lot of people, from John Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy, back when a lot of people also derived inspiration from them. So I decided to get involved as a young activist in college, worked for Senator Moynihan as an attorney on his staff, and also found out when I was working for a congressman, I too was making less money than the man sitting next to me, despite I had been in a large law firm. I took a 50% pay cut to go work on Capitol Hill because that was my passion. But I was a lawyer, had prior experience, and ended up making less than the young man sitting next to me, unbeknownst to me many, many years ago. So Lily's story really resonates with me. But I never thought I'd run for office. I had that same affliction that many women had, and unfortunately still do, which is a lack of confidence. I was always going to be the brains behind the men who are running for office, and do their writing and do their constituent work and make them look good, because it was generally good for the community, but never thought that I personally would put my name on the ballot until I was involved in my local political committee, and a young man who was 22, out of college, had no job yet, living in his parents' basement, had nothing to contribute, decides to run for office in my hometown. And I thought, you know what? I'm 35. I've got 2 kids. I've helped start businesses. I helped women-owned companies. I've done a lot on Capitol Hill. I did a lot, and I still didn't think I had what it took until this young man ran, and that was my inspiration. So from there, I took on all kinds of challenges, races that people said I would never win. I was told if I didn't take the right to lifeline when I was in my running for office in my conservative town, I would never win. I would not take the right to lifeline. It was not who I was. I didn't think government should be telling women what to do with their bodies, even way back then. And so I always just kind of went against the flow, ran for office, ran for Congress, and now I'm lieutenant governor. But my story, I hope, is at least something that other women can look to and say, you never know what life is going to bring you, but be ready to seize the opportunities and take the risks, which is what all of you are talking about. Yes, there's fear of failure, this lack of confidence, you're afraid of, what people are going to say about you, but get over it. Just get over it.
Right.
Men aren't held back by this, and nor should women.
True words. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you for inspiring, because it is nice to hear that you didn't have a silver spoon in your mouth and were handed everything. You worked hard and you took advantage of opportunities that were presented to yourself. So amazing. Lilly, you had a very interesting road into activism and where you sit now. Can you just tell us a little bit about that journey and how you got to where you are, speaking nationwide on behalf of women?
Yes, but it's been a wonderful journey, and I've met so many wonderful people. And I think, like the Lieutenant Governor, had I started a little bit earlier in really activism, I would have been in politics too, because that is one of the places that you can make a big difference. What happened to me and my family after I learned that I was making 40% less than the three men that had the same job, the first thought I had was about my overtime pay, and then the effects it was having on my retirement, 401k, my contributory retirement, and someday my Social Security. And I was 2 years away from retirement, but I just could not let that go, because that was not right. It was not the law, and I knew it. I had been discriminated against, and it affected my family as well. I just could not let it go. I explained to my family that I had to file a charge with Equal Employment Commission unless they objected. And I said, I will warn you, when I start, we will be in this for at least 8 years, because they're not quick solutions to cases like mine. But I was determined to see it through, not so much to try to regain what I had lost in an underpayment and benefits and retirements, but to set the record straight and to make it right. This should be corrected, and the company should be put on notice that in the future they pay women and minorities equitably and fairly like they do the other people. But it actually took me 9 years. I filed my charge in 98. In 99, I got the attorney based on the advice of the Equal Employment Commission. And that's when I found Mr. Goldfarb in Birmingham. He took my case on a contingent basis in 99 and filed a lawsuit, federal suit. And then we got to federal trial in 2003. And then we won $3.8 million in the federal court. But then Goodyear appealed, and it went to the 11th Circuit, and they denied us. We appealed, and we were heard in the Supreme Court in 2006. But we waited until May of 2007 for the verdict. And when that verdict came out, 5-4 against the Ledbetter v. Goodyear case, that closed the doors to the courtrooms, because what that meant, that all future generations of women and minorities could not file a charge unless they knew in the first 6 months of employment that they were being discriminated against in their pay. And most people with a new job, they're not going to be thinking about filing a lawsuit. They're wanting to make a good impression, learn their job, and do well. Because I worked for a corporation that said, if you discuss your pay, you won't have a job. But when we got that verdict and the media started calling, and people from all over the country called, and the support, and my attorney called in 2 weeks, he said, Lilly, we're going to Washington. And I just thought, oh my, why are we going to Washington now? But he said, we're going because they are going to change this law and try to pass a bill to change it back. Just what Justice Ginsburg said. She challenged Congress. She said, the ball is in your court. These people are just indifferent to the way it should be. They don't understand what it's like in the real world. And she said, this is not right. She knew that that should never stand. And I agree. So we went to Washington, and I had so much support. There were so many people there. I have never seen so many microphones and so many cords and so many people so enthused. AAUW, the National Women's Law Center, AARP, you name it. Every organization in Washington was there, and everybody had representatives and the support, and just individuals had come to Washington to hear what were we going to do about this. I testified twice in the House and twice in the Senate. And those aren't easy tasks either, because they send in a lawyer to argue against you and take you apart. But we sacrificed and we stood and we walked the halls of Congress, the House and the Senate, getting support for the Ledbetter bill. And the thing that I'm the proudest of, it was sponsored and co-sponsored by Republicans and Democrats, and it became a law by almost 100% vote. And it was the first bill that President Obama signed, which opened the courtroom doors. But I started traveling the country talking about equal pay for equal work on college campuses, in corporations, just anyone who wanted to book a speaker. I was there because it was important to tell the young people, yes, we have equal pay. I had it from 1963 when President Kennedy signed equal pay law, but I never got to pay because it was never enforced. So we get more bills and more laws that causes the employers to support equal pay or equal work for the country. And I want to inspire people to help make changes, pay attention to Washington, pay attention to their home state, and make sure that they get what they're entitled to.
Thank you so much, Lilly. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for continuing to endure, and we are all better for it. Lieutenant Governor, we talk about risk, and both you and Lilly have that in common, the willingness to take a risk for the greater good. After the Tea Party wave in 2011, you entered a special election in the most Republican congressional district in the state, and against all odds, you won your election. And later, your victory was viewed as a national referendum on an agenda to bankrupt Social Security and Medicare. Despite risking your reelection, you fought to protect the Affordable Care Act, a woman's right to choose, and the rights of the LGBTQ community. Can you share with us why you're willing to take that risk in entering a race in a district where you were so outnumbered and against all odds? And then, despite risking reelection, you chose to stick up for marginalized community. Why is this so important to you?
I think it's in my DNA just to fight regardless of the odds. Even running for that seat, I was told by many political people in my own party, from Washington to our state capitol, don't run for that office after the Tea Party won so overwhelmingly in November. It was a special election the following spring, because when you lose, and it was when you lose, it's going to make it look like there's a continuation of this trend. So in a race that no one thought we could win, they wanted me to just go away quietly and maybe run for local county executive or another position, where the polls showed me that I would probably win. And I actually had a conversation with my 21-year-old daughter at the time. I said, Katie, here's the county race. I have 100% name recognition. I could raise the money, don't need a lot. I just won a county office with almost 80% of the vote. I'm known here. This is the safe job. I could do this. I could be the first female county executive here. I said, or there's that seat in Congress where it's 7 counties, the most Republican district in the state. I have almost no name recognition. I'll be wildly outspent. I'll be up against the Koch brothers and Karl Rove and all these other forces. And I have basically no chance of winning. And I say, Katie, what do you think, honey? And she says, Congress, duh. Mom, you have to do Congress. And I knew at that moment that I had a 21-year-old daughter who wanted to see if her mother had the guts to do something that people told her she could not do. And I viewed my role as a mom and also just as a woman in the business, that I have a responsibility to others and at least pave the way, regardless of the slings and arrows. And it was a brutal campaign. It was so negative, and all the forces across the country that wanted to make sure I lost. It was so scary. The little girl next door said, Mommy, turn off the TV commercials. They make Mrs. Hochul look so scary. I mean, they had me the witch on the broom, and it was brutal. And I was like, you know what? No one's tougher than women. When you think about what we put up with, whether it's childbirth, or just the daily little slights and being ignored in meetings, and just the comments you put up with from the time you're a teenager. We put up with a lot. We just kind of absorb it, but I don't think we realize that it's building character. It's making us tougher. It's making us stronger. So I went through this. We shocked everybody and won because I resonated with Republicans on the Medicare issue and Social Security. And as Lilly spoke about, this is something, as you're approaching retirement age, you get very nervous about. Am I going to have health care when I'm older? And I broke through the partisan lens at the time and was able to win over primarily Republican women. I had my mother calling everybody and going into diners and campaigning. My daughter's such a nice person. You got to vote for her. So we did it the old fashioned way. We won. But as you mentioned, a year and a half later, I had to run for re-election. But in that time, I had stood up to protect the Affordable Care Act. Act 43 times when the Republicans tried to repeal it. I stood up for contraception coverage in the Affordable Care Act, which was lethal in my very conservative Catholic district, and many people in my own church went against me, including my local priest. And it became very hard. And I stood up for the LGBTQ community because it's the right thing to do. All those issues resulted in me losing that re-election by 1.5%, which I will get over someday. It was still hard to think about, but I think at the end of it, you walk away and you say, you know, at least I tried, and I'm proud of that. And a year and a half later, I had the opportunity to be candidate for lieutenant governor and run for statewide office, which was, again, another whole dynamic. I was from rural upstate and I was trying to win over New York City, which is no small feat. But I just think women just lean into these challenges because we're tough. We can handle it. And I love it. I love the fact that, people ask about my story because I want someone else to be the next person who says, I can do this. Be the next Lilly Ledbetter and say, I'm going to stand up and challenge the status quo, because that is the only way we move and make progress down the road. And I'm always inspired when I go to Seneca Falls and think about the women who started the women's rights movement in 1848. They went against the tides of their time. Their own families were against them. Their churches, they said we have a right to vote and a right to be heard, and no one listened to them until 70 years later. But they began the fight. And that's what we try to do every day, is find the areas where there's an injustice, whether it's gender, whether it's racial injustice, criminal injustice, all these injustices. And while we have this time on earth, and this is what my mother taught me, while you have that limited time on earth, don't just go into the world and do well, go into the world and do good. And that's what I live by every single day.
Well, those are words to live by. And I had failed to mention this at the beginning. Lieutenant Governor is a very busy woman. I have been following you on Instagram and you are everywhere. So she does have somewhere else to be and has a hard stop at 6:30. So I just want to keep on learning from you. And I want to talk about, you continue to fight for working families. You have a strong voice in the successful fight for a $15 minimum wage and paid family leave, and are working with the governor and state legislature to prioritize making lives better for all New York families, because no one working full-time should live in poverty. Can you share your thoughts on the cost and implications of equal pay for equal work and how this affects the minimum wage? And I know, Lilly, you're going to definitely have a lot to add to that, but I'll let Lieutenant Governor start and then you can continue the conversation.
This goes back to our own experiences. I wasn't able to join clubs and be involved in high school because I worked 35 hours a week as a waitress making $3 an hour. And you relied on the tips that someone may leave you at a pizzeria or not leave you. So I come from that personal experience, that every check I took home was important. I contributed that to my family. And when you get to a point where you're working full time, you're a full-time individual and you're below the poverty line, there's something wrong with our system. So I went around and conducted rallies and brought people together, people from labor, people from all walks of life, and said, you know what, despite what the business community was telling us, which was that if you have a $15 minimum wage, there'll be no jobs, we're all going to leave the state, all these cataclysmic things are going to happen. It didn't happen. It lifts everyone up when you have people making a living wage and they have more to spend. They can pay their rent, they can buy groceries, they can go out and live a normal American life. I wanted to just cherish that and embrace that and say, this is the way it's supposed to be, not just in New York, but for all Americans. We should have a higher minimum wage for everyone, but also paid family leave. I had to leave that job with the senator when my babies were born because I had no one to watch them. I had no family around. I lived in Washington, no support system, didn't have the money for the limited childcare that was out there. So for me also, I wanted to make sure by the time my children were childbearing age that we'd have a different world. And I'm not seeing that. So I'm out there fighting for childcare, for paid family leave, to make sure that everyone should have the right to be there with their babies when they're first born or adopted, or at the other end of life spectrum, to be there to hold the hand of your parents who took care of you your entire life, if they need you at the very end. So I fight for these family issues because I think it's good, not just for families and individuals, it's good for our economy. Overall, if you want to look at the long term, it is better when people have more money in their pockets to invest, to live a healthy, high quality of life, and to stay in the state of New York. So that's been a driving force in my entire public life, is to make sure that we can take care of individuals, particularly those in need, but to say, if you work hard, you're going to have a good life. You're not going to work hard and fall behind and fall through the cracks, and make sure that everyone has a shot at quality education. We have a system called Excelsior New York. If you live in the state of New York, you don't have to pay for college. For your college, you do not have to pay for if you go to one of our state institutions. We'll help you come up with all the scholarships you need, all the federal and state assistance, and we'll make up the gap if there is one to make your tuition. We are so vested in lifting up every individual from all walks of life. And that's what that's been what I've been doing as Lieutenant Governor, and will continue to do so no matter what role I play.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you for the commitment. Thank you for raising a daughter who told you to stand up and fight. And, having, and Lilly and I spoke about this, when you are in these isolated roles and you are going against the grain, mentioning the family, the support, having that surrounding you is paramount to your success. So I'm very grateful you had an incredible mother that taught you well and an incredible daughter that kept you going. So I know you have to go. We are so incredibly grateful for your time. We look forward to sharing this with you when it's over. And with that, thank you so much for being here. And we look forward to seeing you do incredible things in your career. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was great talking. Bye, Lilly. I'll see you on the trail.
Thank you.
Lilly, so good to see you, or so good to continue this conversation with you. I've gotten to know Lilly quite well, or know her story. I'm immersed in Lilly world, working on Lilly's feature film that's going to be coming out next year. And we'll tell the story of Lilly and make her the household name that she needs to be. In talking to people, people know who Lilly is, but they don't know her story. So we're excited about, but I want to kind of get back to the minimum wage conversation. As the platform from Equal Pay is one that you're so involved with, why don't you share your thoughts on why equal pay is so important, and how do we get society to understand these issues are not just women's issues, but rather all of society's?
This is a terrible shame in this country that it has been so long, too long, since minimum wage was raised. Yet the economy and the cost of living continued to rise. And just recently in my state, the gas has gone tremendously high. So, and the groceries, they say, are about to go higher. So it's just a continuous rat race for people who are working, trying to keep their head above the water, so to speak, and to pay rent. And rent these days, and I've been talking to a lot of people, that's sky high. And once you get behind, it's hard to catch it up like people did during the pandemic. So we really need to look at getting people paid and raising the minimum wage to a living wage where they live. Now, every state doesn't cost as much to live in that state as it does in, say, New York or Washington State, whatever. It might not cost as much in Alabama. You can make a little less here, but you need your pay to be a living wage, because this is a shame. Because what it does, we have this country full of families that their children are going to bed at night hungry because they don't have anything to eat. They're doing without food at school unless the state and the government furnishes lunches for those children. And a lot of times in our state, we have places and schools that are giving the children food for the weekend simply because they don't have food. Then we have food banks. We're giving out food. This shouldn't have to be done this way. People should feel good and have a job that they can go and earn whatever wage it is to live, provide for their family in that state. And this is a shame that we're so far behind. That is one of the things that we're really behind across the country, is paying people a living wage. And it's a win-win situation in my book, because when you have a lot of employees, for example, any amount, and you pay them well, and they know they're being treated fairly with pay according to what they do and the risk and what they participate in at work, and they're there on time and they don't play out and they're always dependable and they're enthused about their job, then that company benefits that. It rubs off on the community and other people. We just must in this country get the minimum wage raised and try to have a living wage paid.
True. And I think, it's good to see that this is a conversation that is on a lot of people's radar. It is something that some are fiercely against and some are all for, but the fact of the matter is we are talking about it as a society, and hopefully with conversation will come change. I'd love to hear your approach to activism and advocacy. What is driving you, and what advice do you have for the younger generation?
I love to go to a college campus, especially to speak And a lot of times I've been, and we have a big college in this state that the leadership program director was told by the young people, we do not need to hear her. We have equal pay. This was probably 10 years ago or longer. She said, you come and hear her. But when I talked about how I worked my job and yet I got paid 40% less than the white men doing the same job, they couldn't believe it because they knew about the equal pay law. And they knew about Title VII. They knew what I was really entitled to, but yet I did not get it. They couldn't believe it. It really astonished them. And that's what I like to go to college campuses. And I like to talk about the confidence that it takes and then the courage for young people when they're interviewing or applying for a job. They need to have that confidence and the courage to start the conversation and make sure before they leave and say that I'm taking this job, they know exactly if they're being paid fairly. Because if they don't get it up front, 6 months later or a year from then, when they get reevaluated and given a raise, it'll be a percentage of what their starting pay was. And I hear story after story where young men and women go into a company and get the job, and they learn later that the women are making $1 or $1.50 less, even for an hourly rate job, than the guys. But they tell them, do not discuss your pay. And these are summer jobs. But this happens all the time. And they put a lot of women, some businesses will put women into a top tier, so to speak. They can't go any farther. But yet all the men they hire, she trains them to go higher than she is.
And that said, at your time at Goodyear, I am so disappointed in how you were treated, for your entire tenure. Can you share with us a bit about your experience at Goodyear and what you endured going in and out of that factory every day, and some of the experiences, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
It got pretty rough because they thought in the beginning that it would be, and there were parts of the factory that was hot. It might be, I've worked at night, a night shift, it'd be 115 degrees. Then I've worked in sections that was air conditioned, and I've worked in sections that was extremely dirty. They thought I would quit. They thought that I would get in there. In fact, the last female that the company had hired, when she found out she'd have to work night shift, third shift, which was 11 to 7 in the morning, she quit right on the spot. But I went there to work. I had a hope that I would work another 25 years and be able to retire from Goodyear Tire and Rubber. I believed in what they did. When I went to work in Gadsden, Alabama, one of the oldest factories they had, the plant was built in 1929. I had planned to retire. But after working a number of years, and I did well on different jobs, and they moved me to another one to be over. And I usually had around somewhere from 25 to 52 to 55 men and maybe one or two women alone in the group, because not very many women had worked in those jobs. So to supervise, and it was in production. So the name of that was to have the schedule and run the schedule, make sure that we kept a tire in every press in the pits. But what happened, they really, after I didn't quit and they couldn't get rid of me, then some of my peers started, and I really think that that's what caused the problems. But I might go out to my car in the morning to leave to come home. I'd have a screw stuck in the side of a tire where you would not pick it up driving. I went out one morning and I had a windshield cut in 3 ways. It was deliberately cut, where if the car had hit a hard bump, it would have broke out. I went out one day with about a gallon of tobacco juice spit on the back of a car. And then the worst thing that happened, I had a car that was new, had a few miles, but I left work and picked up my husband and drove to Birmingham. And when I came out of that doctor's office, I couldn't get my car to move, and the gear shift had the belt taken off. And the mechanic who repaired my car, he said, I've been doing this for 32 years. I've never seen this happen. He said, somebody had to roll under your car and deliberately take it off. And he said, how you drove it as far as you did without wrecking, I'll never know. So I insisted after that the company let me park my car inside the gate. They finally reluctantly did, but I never knew what to expect. But I still didn't quit. I stuck it out. because I still had mortgages to pay. I still had car payments to make. I still had expenses to pay. I still had one in college then. I couldn't quit. I had to keep working. I was not retirement age. I couldn't quit. So, we women, we were in a hard place. You can't quit. You would like to. When I got that note that night, I would like to have reached around and picked up my bag and came home and never went back. It would have been nice to have been, but I couldn't do that. No. I didn't have the income, or I didn't have the savings. And I can't say enough for the law firm that took my case, because they have $500,000 in my case, and they never got a dime, because they were to get 50% of whatever I got. And when I got to the Supreme Court and they took it all away, I didn't get anything, not a dime. No. I never got anything, and neither did they.
It is a shame, but you made change, and you stood up to the face.
I had to. I couldn't let it go. Can you imagine where people would be today without the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act? And I have heard from lawyers. I have heard from business women. I've heard from medical people. I've heard from medical doctors talking about how much money they collected after the Ledbetter bill passed, because they knew and had suspected they were underpaid. So they rushed in and applied, and their employer saw that they were going to get it, and they were paid.
Well, I'm glad I don't have to imagine what it would be like if you didn't stand up, and thank you for doing that. Just to give people an understanding, how old were you when you filed your lawsuit?
I was 58, I believe, or 59, I believe. And see, today I'm 83 and I still travel.
You'll not a day older than 60, Lily.
Invite me and I'll be there to speak. And one thing I want the audience to know too is I always encourage people to always believe, always have faith in yourself, know it's right, and go for it. Don't quit. Don't give up. Don't say you can't, because it can be done. If it's right, it's right. And you can't make it. If it's wrong, that's too bad. If you messed up and that you started something, it's not possible, you say, okay, I'll do this. But you always have hope. You always have faith, and you never give up.
You keep going, and that is grace and grit, and that's something that you just resonate. And as a younger woman, thank you. Thank you for not going home that day. Thank you for finding the right lawyer to take your case. Thank you for going on. After enduring a 8-year court battle,
8 years. Well, it actually took 9. That was when I didn't have a cell phone. We didn't have cell phones then, and I always had to be close to. So if my attorney needed to reach me, and I spent $40,000 of my money out of my IRA investments to be able to do what I did to support the law firm. What little I did in getting people to testify for me and to be witnesses for me and to be there with me.
And speaking of that, when you found out you lost, a woman, Jocelyn Samuels, came knocking on your door from the National Women's Law Center. Can you share with us what that experience was like and how instrumental the National Women's Law Center was in getting the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Restoration Act passed?
It was almost like having my own production department. They were wonderful. I met them on that first go around in Washington, and they were there and they supported me. In fact, they went to Denver with me when I spoke at the first Democratic convention. And when I endorsed Obama that night, and I wasn't supposed to, because they said, long as I stayed neutral, we could get more people to support the bill, either side. And but that night, I knew it was time for me to step out and step up. And I had to step up and say, they said, when did you endorse him? And I said, right now. And so I turned around and made my first commercial for the people that it was a motivational one for all of the people working for the campaign. But then they told me, they said, well, we can't help you anymore. But Jocelyn Samuels wrote me so many testimonies, so many speeches to give around the country. That Ledbetter bill had to be passed. And they had a lady with the law center at the time that was so good in public relations. And I was on any show, any program that you can name. I flew into Washington one time and they said, oh, you've got to get down to Nina Totenberg said, you're going to be on her program. It was raining and it was so cold. And I said, do I have to? And I'd been tromping all over the country and I was extremely tired. They said, well, this is very important. You want to do that. And I really at the time did not know who Nina Totenberg was. So I get in her office though, and I see all these pictures of her and Bob Hope and Frank Sinatra, these people. I know she is somebody really special, and she was. She gave me one of her bags with all of her pictures on it, and she and I ended up one time in another state doing a YMCA, no, it was YWCA convention together. But I had so many experiences, and I asked Jocelyn Samuels, I said, why are you not in private practice? I said, you're brilliant, because she had been the one that ramrodded, I think, Title IX through. She and the support for that. She was brilliant. And I said, why? And she said, that's not where my heart is. But after I stepped out that night in Denver, then the next place I was to go, I was scheduled to be in Virginia to campaign for President Obama. And that morning I got down to the desk because I was only in that hotel one night, and there stood Jocelyn Samuels. And I said, what are you doing here? She said, I'm your staffer today. So she went with me to Virginia. We got into a motor pool and traveled with the president and Mrs. Obama and Jill and Vice President Biden at the time. And it was such a wonderful day. But she is a brilliant prosecutor. She is brilliant. But she said, that's not where my heart is.
Well, we're thankful that she is doing this for doing good, as Lieutenant Governor said, instead of putting out that good energy and giving
Yes.
back. So amazing to hear. In reading your book and doing a lot of research on your background, I love the story of you and Charles. You know, you met at such a young age. He was such an incredible partner to you. And I think with women nowadays, you know, learning how to balance this, you know, partnership and where we move. And I think you were really lucky in that you had a man that stood behind you. And it's a funny anecdote. What did Charles say to you when you said, I want to take this case and I want to go to court? What was his response?
Well, first of all, at one point, I wasn't sure we would able to keep our house. They might, go after me for expenses if I lost. I said, I'll deed you my half of the house. And he said, don't worry. So we started with nothing. We'll start again. But when I told him that I was going to file the charge, he said, what time would you like to leave? So I took my shower and changed clothes, and he drove me to Birmingham and waited all day almost, because back then you walked in, you didn't have to call ahead and get an appointment. Today you do. But I walked in and signed the book, and the lady who took me, she's mentioned in the book, Ollie Crooms. She had been there for years, but she was very dedicated to what she did. And she pulled out of me all of these gory details because, through the years, if it was bad, I didn't dwell on it. I didn't talk about it. I sort of filed it away and let it go. And you need to do that. I want to tell especially young women, you can't let things be personal. You let it be business. It's strictly business. It's not personal. Deal with it, make a decision, make it happen, and go on. All that came out. When I got up to leave after over 3 hours, she said, Mrs. Ledbetter, these people have been messing with you for a long time. I didn't realize it until that day. Had I been younger, back when all the trouble started with me, I probably would have just gotten another job somewhere. But at that age, it wasn't a practical thing to do for me to get another job. Plus, the one I had paid well, even at the low pay, and I had great benefits. I had great medical care. I had paid sick leave and all those type things. And that wasn't the practical thing to do. So you have to weigh your pros and cons when you're making a decision.
So we're going to break for questions in a second, but for those in the audience who don't know, this is so exciting to share. There's going to be a Lilly Ledbetter movie that's coming out, written and directed by Rachel Feldman, titled Lilly, starring the incomparable Patricia Clarkson. And in partnership with that film, we are launching a social impact campaign titled And Rise, which will answer the issues and provide a solution-oriented campaign to what people will see take place on the screen. As Lily's detailed in this conversation, everything from sexual harassment to intimidation to the pay gap, we're all issues that she endured. And we believe, as part of the film team, that people are going to have a conversation, and this is going to start social chatter. And like Erin Brockovich and Hidden Figures, films have the ability to change hearts and minds. And so we're going to be launching this campaign in partnership with the film. What do you hope that this film and campaign will accomplish?
I do. I hope it will, because I had a great publisher. I wanted the book to go on and cover all of those times that I walked, that Jocelyn Samuels and I walked those halls of Congress. And I did that testifying before the House and before the Senate, because those were tough times. I wanted that, but we didn't quite get that. But that's okay. That's all right. People hear it later, and I'm hoping that the movie brings a little of it out. On the other hand, they need to hear this story, because it is an American story. It's not just mine. It belongs to a lot of people in this country. It's a national epidemic, to tell you the truth. And had I known about, and I wasn't educated enough to know all of the organizations that was out there at the time, like the National Women's Law Center. Had I had them, maybe during the trial even of my case, I could have done a little better. I don't know.
Well, that's one goal of the campaign, is to promote and highlight the nonprofit partners who are doing the good work in this space. And the campaign has partnered with the National Women's Law Center, Equal Rights Advocates, the Gina Davis Institute for Gender on Media, the Institute for Women's Policy Research are all partners of this campaign, which will be launching to the public in early 2022, prior to the film release. Lilly, I'm going to turn it back over to Summer and Jacqueline, but I personally want to thank you for making the time, for being an incredible advocate, for fighting the good fight, and just for being an incredible inspiration to all of us in this next generation of strong, powerful women. We owe you a debt of gratitude. I'm so excited to tell your story and to make you that household name that you deserve to be. And thank you so much. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And with that, I will turn it over to Jacqueline and Summer.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lilly. And thank you, Kate. That was done so eloquently, and we really appreciate you hosting and moderating this evening. Lilly, your points and your sentiment, your passion, your drive, your courage, your fearlessness has inspired all of us this evening to keep pushing, to keep fighting, to keep advocating for women and for equal pay. Thank you so much for being here. We all appreciate you, and just a lot of gratitude. And with that, I'll pass it over to Summer.
Yes. Kate, thank you so much for doing a fantastic job moderating the panel. And Lilly, such a great honor to have you. And we all look forward to seeing the movie. We have to support you, and we cannot wait to see the movie. And ladies, for whoever don't know us or are not a member yet, I just want to put it out there. Check out our website, phillytribe.com. Currently, we're still open to accept the new members' applications. And you can see some of our members here. So Kate was a founding member of Fyli, and we have the brave and brilliant Katie, who is our current cohort member. Crystal and Melin is also here. So we just welcome you to come back and to join more empowering and inspiring conversations in the future. So hope all you have a great evening. And Lilly, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Have a good night.